Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at round 5 of Norway chess, which is being held here in Stavanger. Now, yesterday was a rest day, but in the previous round, I had a huge win against Ramesh Babu Pragnanth from India. Now, today in round 5, I'm playing the last player in the tournament who I've not yet to face, and that, of course, is the reigning world chess champion, Liren from China. Now, I have not actually faced Ding since the fateful game that I lost to him in the 2022 Candidates last round, which propelled him to a match against Jan Nepomniachtchi when Magnus Carlsen chose to not defend his title. So first game playing against Ding since that fateful encounter in 2022, Ding will have the white pieces, and let's dive right into the action. So the game starts with d4. Here I play the move d5, and now we get this move c4. Now in this position, after c4 is played here, I decide to play this move c5. Now, this move probably came as a big surprise to Ding, if I had to guess. I doubt that he was expecting it, although I did play something similar in the Candidates against Prague, where Prague played knight f3, knight f6, and then we had this move c4, c5. Anyway, back to the action. So here we go. All right, so we get c4, c5, Ding plays move c takes d5 here, and now I play this move knight f6. Now, this move is very rare. It actually was a very common move back in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. A lot of famous games from that era which feature this move, but in modern times, it's simply not a move that is played that frequently. And in fact, when I played the system with d5 and c5 in the Chess Champions Tour against Magnus Carlsen in December of last year in Toronto, I played the move queen takes pawn here. So I play knight f6. Now, this was actually one of my big surprise ideas that I had ready for the Candidates, but much to my horror, about 2 hours before I played this game against Ding, there was a game played in the French Team Championship featuring one of my seconds for the Candidates, which was Niels Grandelius, who actually played this against Sabino Brunello from Italy. Nonetheless, I felt confident playing this knight f6 surprise because I had the feeling that Ding probably would not be paying attention to random league games being played in France, but more importantly, when he had the position against Alireza Firouzja in round 4 of this tournament, Norway chess, he actually followed the game between Alireza and Fabiano, but he was unaware of the correct move order. So, after knight f6, we get knight c3. I take the pawn. Ding plays knight c3. We get the trade. I play knight c3, queen c3, and now I play this move knight to c6. Here we get e4 from Ding, and I play this move a6. Now, the idea behind a6 is to stop white from moving the bishop to b5. Also, I might want to play bishop g4 or e5 down the road. Here we get to move bishop e2 from Ding, and this was a bit of a surprise to me. Now, most of the games of this tournament, with the exception of my one game against Alireza, I have surprised my opponents in the opening, and today was no exception. So, I was already up 16 minutes here, but this move bishop e2 took me by surprise. Now, the move that I was expecting Ding to play here, if he knew the variation, was this move a3. Now, the reason that white plays a3 here is that if black were to play e5 in this position, after knight takes pawn, there's no longer this idea with bishop b4. So after bishop e2, I spent a lot of time here before playing the move e5. Ultimately, what I concluded was that e5 has to make sense because the computer thinks a3 is the best move and white doesn't do it. Then why not play e5? Because that had to have been the intent behind the a3 move in the first place. Now, maybe that's a little bit too deep. Maybe I was overthinking it, but I thought this move made a lot of sense. Now, of course, if white were to play knight takes pawn, after bishop to b4, you win the queen here, and with it, you win the game. So we get a3 now from Ding. I play bishop g4, and Ding really surprised me by castling his king here. Now, in this position, I was expecting Ding to play this move bishop to e3, followed by rook to d1. I didn't really think I was worse or anything, but I also didn't think I was much better. So we get castles. I play rook to c8, and now Ding plays this move queen b3, and this is the start of going in the wrong direction. Now, even though both of us are out of preparation, it feels a little bit easier for me to play this position because I have the rook on the open lane. I can try to create the bastion or some fossils with knight to d4, and just in general, it should be easier. So, Ding plays queen b3. Now, the computer actually wants white to play a strange move, bishop c4, walking into all kinds of threats and pins on the c file here, and apparently white is a little bit better. Nonetheless, Ding plays queen b3, I play the move knight to a5, and now he plays queen a4 check. Here I go b5, and Ding plays queen d1. Now, white could sack a bishop on b5, but after takes, for example, knight c6, knight takes e5, and bishop d7, takes, and something like bishop to e3 here. I perceive that black should be a little bit better in this resulting position after bishop e7, even though white has 3 pawns in return for the knight. Instead, Ding plays queen d1. Now, as soon as Ding played this move, queen d1, I started feeling very, very confident about my chances. So I traded the queens, and now Ding also surprised me by playing rook takes queen on d1. What I was expecting from Ding was bishop takes queen to stop me from jumping to b3 with the horse. So we get rook takes queen, I go knight b3, rook b1, and now I play this move bishop to c5. Here, Ding plays king to f1, and this move also took me a little bit by surprise. In this position, I was expecting Ding to either play h3 here to try and kick my bishop away, or this move a4 to try and open up this long diagonal for the light square b. So instead we get king f1, now I go f6 here, creating the classic connect 4, as well as a chain of 3 pawns in the center of the board. Ding decides to play rook to d3, and now I play bishop e6, retreating the bishop and guarding the horse. Now, keep in mind, if I go something like bishop e6 right away, white always has ideas like knight g5 to harass the bishop on e6. So I go f6, rook d3, bishop e6, bishop guards knight, no knight g5 ideas, and I have this very nice chain of pawns in the center of the board. Game continues with knight d2, I play knight d4, we get b4, bishop b6, bishop b2, and now I play this move, knight takes bishop on e2. Now, this was a tricky spot here. I think maybe it was the move before where I used a bunch of time, but I really wasn't sure whether I should trade the knight for the bishop or try to play king e7, play Le Bon Cloud, and keep all of these pieces on the board, but most importantly, keeping the classic bastion with the knight on d4. Ultimately, I decided to take the bishop because after king takes and king e7 here, black has the 2 b's. I have 2 really nice open diagonals, and I have 2 rooks here to try and infiltrate on the c file and create the classic cabal. So the game continues with f3, and now I play this move rook c2, which is simply a mistake according to the computer. Now for the computer, if black plays a strange looking move g5, black is apparently close to winning. I know on the weak engine it's not showing it as winning, but when I spoke to my trainer after the game, he did mention that g5 followed by g4 is something like -2 at least, and white is probably losing. Now, the reason I didn't play a move like g5 is I thought here white could play rook c3, and after takes in this position, if I ever go rook c8, white can play king to d3, guarding the bishop, and I just figured, where's my play? Now, the reason that g5 is so strong here is that one of the big advantages in the position with the 2 b's is I can now try to play and open up this g file here where white is going to struggle. If we get some move like, let's just say, rook c1, takes, for example, here. I can play rook g8 to play on the g file. I can also go rook c8. Between having access to both the g and the c files here, this means that I'm doing very, very well. So instead, I play rook c2, Ding goes rook c3, and now I play this move bishop to c4, checking the king on e2. After bishop c4, Ding goes king e1, and this move I thought was simply a mistake. What I expected Ding to play was king d1, and after takes rook to d8, black should be better with D's bishops here on the active diagonals, but I did not see a knockout blow right away. Instead, Ding goes king to e1, and now I play this move bishop to f2, checking the king and trying to pick up the horse on d2. Ding plays the move king d1, and after this move, I would say that white is in a ton of trouble. The computer shows this line with king takes, rook takes, and king g1, and apparently white is okay. One line that I thought white could try to play is king g3, but after h5 here, trying to go h4. If white plays h4, I have rook to h6, activating the 2 towers, and suddenly white is simply losing the game. But the computer shows the cold-blooded move king g1, and I assumed after rook d8 here, I was simply winning. If I go bishop a2 right away to try and pick up the rook on b1 here, white has a very study-like move, rook c7 check. If I go king d8, there's rook c1, followed by rook c8, picking up the tower on h8. And if I go king e6, again, white has rook c1, because if I take the bishop, suddenly rook c6 is simply checkmate, as the king has no squares available. So the move that I assumed was winning was rook d8 here, and the reason I assumed this was winning is because now if white plays a move like h3, bishop to a2 does in fact win the game here, because after rook c7, king to f8, there are no longer any threats with the tower stacking on the file. I'm simply going to capture the rook or the bishop on the next turn. So after takes king g1, the computer says white can play rook c to c1 here. Rook d8, rook c, c1, because now if bishop a2, there's bishop c3, attacking my rook in return for his rook being under attack. Again, a very, very hard line to see, but after rook a d3 here, white can go bishop c3, rook to a2, bishop to e1, and after I decide to play this move, rook d takes a3, white can go bishop f2, followed by bishop c5, guarding the pawn, and maybe white has decent chances to draw the game. Now, again, this is a very deep computer line. It's not something that I think a human would find, and in fact, Ding did spend a lot of time here before playing this move king to d1. So after king d1, I trade the towers. I go rook to d8 here, pinning the knight on d2. And white is really in trouble here. Now the bishop on c3, very passive with the 3 pawns connected, blunting any force. Queenside closed here. I control the open lane, and these bishops are very free to start going after the pawns on the king side. So we get rook to a1. Here I play bishop f1, targeting the pawn on g2. And now Ding plays this move g3. After g3, I played this move bishop to e3. And this is a move that I played after quite a long think in this position. It's not what I originally wanted to do. What I wanted to play initially was this move rook d3. But after king c2, bishop to e2, and this move rook to h1, I did not see an easy way to win these pawns. If I go bishop f3, for example, there's rook f1, picking up one of the bishops. Now I play something like bishop e3. Now there's rook to e1, which hits the bishop on e2. And it's just very difficult to prove the advantage. I also thought I could maybe go rook to e3 here, but after f4, for example, takes in this position, bishop d3 and king to d1, I didn't see a forced win. Now, the computer says after rook to h3, black is winning, but without seeing a concrete way to win the game, I was looking for something which was a little bit more forcing. So what I ultimately arrived upon was this move bishop to e3, pinning the knight on d2, and now we get this move a4. Now, if white were to go king e1, for example, there's bishop g2, putting massive pressure on these pawns on f3 and e4. And after king e2 takes, I can take this pawn on f3, and after takes and rook takes d2, I assume that I'm winning this endgame after a4. I spent a lot of time calculating this line. My assumption was after rook to d4, takes. If white goes rook a7, I can simply hide this king on g6 eventually and win the game, as I'll pick up the pawn on b4, and I'll have 5 pawns versus white's 3 pawns on the king side. If white chooses to play this move rook b1, guarding the pawn on b4, now I can slowly improve my position here, and eventually I'll start playing h5, king g5, g6, and f5, and white's rook is tied down to the pawn, and his king is tied down to this other pawn on e4. So Ding decides instead to play a4, I chop, and now I go bishop to b5, rook to a1, and I play this move rook d3, putting more pressure on both the bishop and the knight in this position. Ding plays rook c1, only move, by the way, because if white goes king c2 here, I can sack the rook with rook takes bishop, takes, and now I create the classic connect 4, and I also pick up the rook in the corner pocket, and with 2 b's versus a horse, the 2 b's sting more effectively. So Ding plays rook c1, I go h5 here, king c2, I take, and now I win this pawn on f3. Now, I'm only up 1 pawn here, but the reason I thought this was so close to winning is that this e4 pawn is super brittle and vulnerable here, and I don't think white will be able to guard it. So Ding goes rook e1, I play bishop e6, and now he plays this move rook e3. Now, at this point, I'm down 13 minutes on the clock, and I have a very difficult decision. Do I trade these rooks, take the pawn, and after king d2, play a move like g5, or do I go for the option to keep the rooks on the board with rook f2. Now, my assumption was that this endgame with the connected pawns in the center of the board should be winning, but I actually did not see a forced win after, say, g5, bishop b6, something like, let's just say king e6 and bishop to d8 here, putting pressure on these pawns. Now, computer might show this as winning in the long term, but the reason that I chose not to go into this is because if I'm wrong, all of Ding's moves become very easy here, and I'm already down on clock, which means I'm going to be extremely precise, and even if I'm extremely precise, it might not be winning, and all of white's moves here are very, very thematic. They follow a very straightforward plan, which is that if black can ever get a position like this, for example, just to illustrate the point, something like this, followed by e4 and e3, black wins the game. But I just don't know if I can get that, because if I ever go g4 and you get a position like this, for example, black never is getting this pass pawn, or the 2 connected pass pawns in the center of the board, and I'm simply not sure if it's winning. So after a long think, I decided to play this move rook to f2, because I figured even though I'm only up 1 pawn here, this e4 pawn is super weak, the pawns on the king side are loose, and white really never has any counterplay because of this connect 3, and the fact that I can always stick this bishop on b5 in the long term to guard the pawn on a6. So without the weaknesses here, I figured why not play on? So we get h4. I go bishop a4, king c3, and now the next sequence of moves is sort of me dawdling around trying to slowly improve the position, so I'm not going to give you guys a lot of commentary on them, but I slowly start improving this position over and over again, keep moving the pieces around the board, and finally here I play this move g5. Now the reason that I finally played g5 here is with the bishop on g2, I want to push p with h4, h3, h2, and h1 queen, winning the game. The bishop on g2 also targets the pawn on e4, so it's a very unusual wooden shield on g2, but I figured this should be a straightforward path to winning. Also, keep in mind, if white ever decides to trade the pawns and play rook to a1 here, I can go check, king d2, and this move bishop to f1, guarding the pawn on a6. And if white goes rook a5, trying to win the pawn on e5, I have bishop b5, bishop guards the pawn, no threats towards e5, and now I can push h4, take the pawn, and win the game. So Ding plays bishop d2 here. I chop on h4. I go bishop f1, king c3, and now I play this move bishop to e2. Now the reason I played this move is that the optimal setup for white here is rook e3 and bishop to e1, where the rook guards the pawn and the bishop, and the bishop on e1 guards the pawn on h4. And we of course also have the classic right triangle. But when I go bishop to e2, I cut white off from putting this rook on e3. So when Ding goes bishop e3 now, and I play rook h2, he doesn't get the bishop to e1, and he also doesn't have the rook on e3. And now the game is effectively over, as I'm simply going to win this pawn on h4. One sample line here would be something like rook to g1, for example, but now I can go rook to f3, king to b2, rook to h3, and after bishop to e1 here, now I can simply play bishop to f3, winning the pawn on e4. And keep in mind that if white plays rook g3 here, rook to h2 wins, but here I can even trade the rooks, because now you'll notice that I'm actually getting the two central pawns pushing up the board here, and eventually with e4, e3, I am going to win the game. So Ding goes bishop to e3, I play the move rook to h2, he plays bishop c5, and now I play this move bishop to b5, and Ding Liren, the current world chess champion, resigns the game against me because there's really no effective way to guard the pawn on h4. The f2 square is covered, there's no bishop f2, and if you lose the h-pawn, it's just all over, because once I win the h-pawn, just as a sample line, I can even start to go after the e-pawn, and none of the endgames, even with the opposite colored bishops, are ever going to be a draw. So after bishop b5, Ding resigns the game. I get my second win in a row, this time with the black pieces in the classical portion, which means that I do maintain the lead in the tournament. Now, there are a lot of fireworks across the board. Magnus Carlsen won a beautiful endgame. He sort of swindled Alireza Firouzja, the Iranian super talent who represents France, and Praggnanandhaa also played a beautiful knight and pawn endgame to defeat Fabiano Caruana. So what that means is that in the top three spots, you have myself, Magnus, and I believe Prag is now in third, if I'm not mistaken. It's a very, very exciting tournament. We're at the halfway mark. Now, tomorrow will be round 6, and I will start the second half where I play the same 5 players with the colors reversed, meaning that I play against Fabiano with white tomorrow in round 6. Fabiano obviously had a tough time. He's lost 2 games in a row, but always a very dangerous opponent, so we're gonna have to see how it goes. But that's gonna be it for now, you guys. Again, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we will be back tomorrow with a recap after my 6th round game here in Norway chess against Fabiano Caruana. See you guys soon. Have a good one. Bye.